You've been thinking all day, but have you ever paused and asked yourself, where do those thoughts actually come from? You might believe that every idea in your mind, every fleeting feeling, every plan or fear is your own creation. But what if I told you something unsettling? What if most of what moves through your mind didn't actually originate with you? What if your thoughts are not entirely yours? Let that sink in. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, your mind is in motion. Thoughts flicker like candle flames, some bright and blazing, others soft and distant. And yet, have you noticed something strange? Sometimes thoughts just appear. You didn't call them, you didn't construct them, and still, there they are. Maybe it's a judgment, a sudden fear, a memory you didn't choose to revisit, a random intrusive idea. It drops in like a whisper, unannounced, unquestioned, and often unnoticed. This is the phantom whisper, and you've been listening to it your entire life. But let's get even more honest. How many of your beliefs were truly chosen by you? Think about the opinions you hold, the stories you tell yourself about what's possible, about what you deserve. Were they carved from your inner truth, or handed to you before you even had the ability to say no? You were programmed, not by some villain in the shadows, but by everything around you. Parents, teachers, TV shows, commercials, religious texts, even well-meaning loved ones. All of them whispered ideas into your subconscious when you were too young to question them. And now, those whispers have become your inner voice. You see, the subconscious mind isn't a vault, it's a sponge. It absorbs everything, especially when you're young, when your brain is in that vulnerable theta state between birth and about age 7. In that state, you weren't analyzing the world, you were downloading it. Every statement, every tone, every facial expression from adults around you etched itself into your psyche. So if you've ever wondered why you self-sabotage, or why you feel unworthy, or why you keep repeating the same toxic cycles, the answer is simple. It's not because you're broken, it's because you're still living under the spell of those early whispers. And here's the shocking part. Most of your thoughts aren't thoughts at all. They're programs, loops, echoes. You call them me, but they're really just mental artifacts passed down from other people's limitations. This is the great illusion of thinking. The belief that because it's in your head it must be you, but you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness beneath them. And when you begin to grasp this, you start to feel something shift. A new kind of clarity emerges. One that doesn't just examine your thoughts, but observes them without clinging to them. You start to notice the space between the whisper and the reaction, the pause between the thought and the emotion. That space is your portal. That space is your power. Because in that space you begin to ask questions that most people never dare to ask. Where did this belief come from? Is this thought even true? Does this idea serve me or imprison me? When you ask these questions, something extraordinary happens. You stop living on autopilot. You begin reclaiming your mind. You begin deprogramming the phantom whisper. And this is the beginning of liberation. But let's go even deeper. Have you ever meditated or sat in silence and noticed thoughts arise from nowhere, one after another, like clouds drifting across a sky you don't control? That's not a coincidence. That's the nature of thought. It emerges, flows, and dissolves without your permission. Now, most people either chase these thoughts or fight them, but very few simply witness them. Why? Because we've been conditioned to identify with every mental flicker. We think, therefore we are, right? But what if that's wrong? What if the real you isn't the one thinking, but the one watching the thinking? Try this now. Pause. Close your eyes if you want, and just observe. What's the next thought that comes up? There it is. A sentence, an image, a worry, a memory. And now here's the powerful question. Did you choose that thought? If you didn't, who did? This is the mind's most powerful illusion, that it is in control. But the truth is, most of your mental activity is reactive, not creative. It's noise disguised as wisdom, habit masquerading as truth. But don't worry. This isn't bad news, it's freedom. Because once you realize that you're not the author of every thought that passes through your awareness, you also realize you don't have to obey them. You are not your anxiety. You are not your fear. You are not that self-doubt that creeps in every time you try to grow. You are the field in which all thoughts arise and dissolve. You are the presence, the observer, the infinite. And here's the secret they don't teach in school or religion or the workplace. Once you become the observer, the thoughts lose their grip. You begin to see them for what they are. Just passing weather, not commands, not prophecy. Just movement. And in that moment you become dangerous to the system, to the conditioning, to every voice that tried to keep you small, because now you're awake. Now you can choose what thoughts to water and which to let wither. Now you can reprogram your subconscious with beliefs that reflect your soul, not your scars. You start planting thoughts like, I am enough, I am powerful, I am guided, I am not my past, I am my potential. And the more you repeat them, the more they sink in, not just at the surface level, but deep, where your real reality is written. That's the power of conscious repetition. That's the power of meditation. That's the power of silence, because silence isn't empty. It's full of you. So the next time a thought appears uninvited, ask yourself, is this thought lifting me up or locking me down? And if it's the latter, gently let it go. You don't have to argue with it. Just stop feeding it. You are not here to be ruled by phantom whispers. You're here to speak your own divine truth into existence. And your truth is love. Your truth is power. Your truth is freedom. But that truth doesn't scream. It doesn't demand. It waits patiently for you beneath the noise. It whispers, too, just softer, quieter, always available, if you dare to listen. So today let this be your practice. Observe your thoughts, question your beliefs, reject the lies, and return to the stillness that has always been you, because once you know who you are beyond thought, no phantom whisper can ever rule you again. Have you ever really stopped, deeply, completely stopped, and asked yourself who is doing the thinking right now, not just as a passing idea, but as a real inquiry? Because there's a belief so deeply embedded in your mind, it operates like a law of gravity, the assumption that you are the one who thinks your thoughts, that there's a little you behind the eyes, seated at the command center, pulling levers, organizing ideas, deciding what to believe, what to fear, what to desire. But let's slow down and question that. Right now, as you hear these words, are you choosing each thought that arises in your awareness, or are they simply appearing, spontaneously, automatically, like pop-up windows on a screen you didn't design? Maybe a memory just floated in, a judgment, an idea for something else you need to do. But did you actually create it? If you sit quietly and begin to notice the stream of thoughts flowing through your mind, what you'll discover, if you're honest, is that you are not authoring them, you're witnessing them. And that's a radically different experience. You were taught from a young age that I think is an active declaration, that your thoughts are like tools you reach for and use to solve problems, understand life, or define who you are. But what if that's not true? What if that's just the most convincing illusion of all? What if your thoughts arise the same way the wind moves across the sky, without your consent, without a source you can trace, without a controller you can locate? You see, the mind is loud. But awareness is quiet. It watches, it observes, and it doesn't speak in words. It speaks in presence, and that is what's been buried beneath the noise all along. You've been conditioned to believe that there's a central you thinking all the thoughts, but when you really look, when you try to locate that thinker, you'll find something astonishing. You can't find it because it's not there. You'll find thoughts about thinking, thoughts about the self, but not the self itself. And that's the crack in the matrix, the moment when you realize that the thinker is just another thought, a story you've believed for so long that you forgot to question its origin. And here's where the paradox deepens. If you can observe a thought, then you cannot be the thought, just like you can't be the clouds if you're the sky. So what does that make you? You are the one who sees. The silent presence underneath. You've mistaken the movement for the mover, but in truth there is no mover, just movement. And in that realization you unlock something profound. Freedom. Let's go further. Imagine you're sitting in meditation or stillness. A thought arises. I'm not good enough. Now pause and ask, did you deliberately choose to think that thought in that moment? Probably not. It appeared. It played itself out. Maybe it triggered an emotion, but it wasn't summoned. It was like a reflex, like muscle memory, like a ghost repeating itself inside the walls of your consciousness. This is what most of your inner dialogue is. Conditioned patterns, not insights, not truth, just echoes. You think you're the source, but you're actually the screen. And here's the tricky part. The voice in your head sounds like you. It speaks in your language. It uses your memories. It mimics your desires. So it must be you, right? But is your reflection in a mirror actually you? No, it's an image, a projection. And so is the thinker. It's a mask worn by awareness. It feels real, it looks real, but it dissolves the moment you try to grasp it, because it never had substance to begin with. This is no philosophy, this is observation. Right now, pause and ask, where do my thoughts come from? Try to trace one back to its origin. What you'll notice is that the thought didn't come from a center. It came from nowhere and returned to nowhere. You can't predict the next thought. You can't stop the next one. You can't hold on to the last one. They appear and disappear, like waves in the ocean. And the ocean isn't trying to make them, they just happen. So again, who is doing the thinking? There is no little person behind the curtain, no inner manager typing your thoughts on a typewriter. There is only this, awareness, witnessing a stream of thought. But what happens is this. Because that stream is so constant, and because you've never been taught to watch it instead of believe it, you end up identifying with it. And then you suffer. Because the mind doesn't care about peace, it cares about patterns. And most of those patterns were built in survival, not in truth. So they repeat pain, they repeat fear, they repeat control. But the moment you take a step back, and I mean truly take that internal step, you shift from I am thinking to thoughts are happening, and that shift changes everything. It's the first break in the illusion. It's when the clouds begin to part, and the vastness of your true self begins to emerge, not as another thought, but as the space in which all thought arises. This is why ancient sages talked about the power of self-inquiry, not self-improvement, not self-discipline, but self-inquiry. Asking who am I, and not accepting the first answer, because every answer you get will be another thought, and the real answer can't be found in words. It's a silence, a presence, a clarity beyond language. You'll find it in the stillness behind the thinking. And here's what's wild. When you stop believing you are the thinker, you become more intelligent, not less. Because now, instead of being possessed by every mental impulse, you can choose. You can discern. You can let go of 99% of the noise and wait for what actually feels like insight, what actually feels like intuition. That's not thinking. That's knowing. You don't have to think through every problem. You can drop into the quiet and feel your way through, because the deepest truths don't need to be figured out. They're revealed, in stillness, in silence, in the spaces where the thinking mind finally gets quiet enough for your soul to speak. So the next time a stressful thought pops up, try this. Don't argue with it. Don't fight it. Don't even believe it. Just ask, who is thinking this? Watch what happens. The thought might sputter, it might try to justify itself, but if you stay still, it fades. It loses power, because the spell is broken. And that's the beginning of awakening. You are not your thinking, You are the awareness in which thinking happens. You are not the storm, you are the sky. And when you realize this, not just intellectually but experientially, everything starts to change. You suffer less, you react less, you control less, and in doing so, you finally begin to live more. So let this truth settle in your being. You've never been the thinker. You've always been the witness. And the moment you remember that, the noise begins to dissolve, because it was never yours to carry. Try to find the exact moment a thought is born. Really try. Sit still and wait for the next one to arrive. Don't interfere, just watch. You'll find that before the thought appears, there's nothing, just space. And then, suddenly, a word, a picture, a memory, a judgment, it's there. It exists. But not because you created it, not because you summoned it with some internal effort. It just showed up. And as soon as you try to trace its origin, it slips away like mist between your fingers. This is the smoke of the mind. The illusion that thoughts have a fixed source you can locate if only you dig deep enough. But the truth is, the harder you look, the less there is to find. You might imagine that somewhere in the back of your head, behind your eyes, is a little chamber where your consciousness sits, composing thoughts, deciding what to think next, pulling ideas out of thin air like a magician pulling scarves from a hat. But when you go looking for that chamber, when you try to find the command center, you find something terrifyingly beautiful. Absence. No control room. No thinker. Just thoughts. Just movement. Just smoke swirling in the empty air of awareness. This can be unsettling at first. After all, you've spent your entire life believing you're in control of your mind, that there's a you steering the wheel. But what happens when you discover that the steering wheel isn't connected to anything? What happens when you realize the ship is drifting, not being directed? That doesn't mean you're powerless, quite the opposite. It means you've been looking in the wrong place all along, because your true power isn't in trying to control the smoke, it's in realizing you are the sky it drifts through. When you close your eyes and start watching thoughts, at first they feel personal, like each one is handcrafted by some invisible part of you. But keep watching, let them play out. You'll notice something strange. The thoughts seem to think themselves. One leads to another. A memory triggers a feeling triggers an image becomes a worry morphs into a plan. It's like dominoes falling, but you didn't push the first one. You're just watching the cascade. And the more you watch, the more you realize you're not at the center of any of it. You're not in the movie, you're the screen, unchanging, silent, present. This realization doesn't come in a flash of logic. It comes in the quiet observation of your own mind, until the illusion starts to crack, until you realize the I you've been protecting, defending, and identifying with has no edge, no core, no origin point you can touch. You may ask, but if I'm not thinking my thoughts, then who is? That question is itself a thought. It feels urgent. It feels important, but it's part of the same smoke. It loops back into the illusion. The real question isn't who is thinking. The real question is, what is aware of this thought? That's the doorway. That's the key, because what's aware isn't another thought. It isn't a voice. It's not emotional. It doesn't judge. It just watches like a mirror, reflecting everything without trying to fix it. This is why spiritual masters from every tradition have pointed inward, not outward, not toward knowledge or effort or control, but toward presence, toward awareness. Because when you rest as the witness, something astonishing happens. The mind starts to settle, not because you forced it to, but because it's being seen for what it is. Smoke. Not substance, not reality, just patterns in the wind. You've probably spent much of your life trying to control your mind, to force it into silence, to chase away the thoughts you don't like and cling to the ones that make you feel safe. But that effort is like trying to grab smoke with your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. Control is not the way. Observation is. Watching without grasping. Witnessing without interference. That's the way. It's no coincidence that meditation traditions emphasize stillness, not because stillness is a goal, but because in stillness you see the truth. When the waves settle, you can see through the water. And what you see is this: the mind is just a storyteller. It tells you a new tale every second. And like a dream, you believe it until you wake up. But once you wake up, the story no longer controls you. You can listen to it, you can even enjoy it, but you know it's not you. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever believed something about yourself for years, only to realize it was never true? Maybe you believed you weren't smart enough, or lovable enough, or strong enough, and one day something shattered that belief. Maybe a moment of courage, or a deep insight, or someone's love. And just like that, the thought that had ruled your life turned to dust. That's the nature of smoke. It seems real until light shines through it. The mind is full of smoke screens, stories that were never yours, beliefs inherited from wounded people, ideas picked up from television, school, religion, trauma. And you wore them like clothes you forgot you could take off. But now you know, you can peel them away. You can watch them dissolve in the light of awareness. This doesn't mean the mind is your enemy. It means you don't have to worship it anymore. You can respect it, but you don't have to obey it. You can use it as a tool, but you no longer confuse it with your identity. You are not the thoughts. You are not the thinker. You are the space in which all thinking happens. And here's where it gets sacred. When you stop chasing the origin of thought, when you let go of trying to capture it, you fall into something deeper, a silence that's always been there, a stillness that doesn't need answers, a presence that doesn't need identity. That's your true nature, not the smoke, but the space. Not the words, but the awareness between them. And from that space, life becomes clearer. You don't react to every mental impulse. You don't get swept up in every fear. You don't need to fix everything that passes through your head. You realize that most of it isn't even yours. It never was. It was just smoke pretending to be a fire. So let yourself rest in that truth. Let yourself sink into the part of you that doesn't need to think, doesn't need to analyze, doesn't need to understand everything to feel safe. That part of you already knows. It knows you are whole. It knows you are free. It knows that thoughts may come and go, but you remain. Unshaken, unbroken, eternal. This is the invitation. To stop trying to pin down the wind. To stop searching for a source that doesn't exist. To stop building a self out of smoke, and instead remember the sky. You are not what passes through. You are what remains. And what remains is infinite. You've had it happen before. A thought pops into your head so strange, so uncomfortable, so out of alignment with who you believe you are, that you freeze. You wonder, where did that come from? Maybe it's an aggressive impulse. Maybe it's a dark image. Maybe it's a deeply irrational fear that makes no sense in the moment. It feels like a stranger has entered your mind without knocking. It catches you off guard, unsettles you, even makes you question your own sanity. But what if I told you this experience, this moment where your own mind seems foreign, isn't a glitch, it's a clue that the thoughts in your head are not you, that the mind is not a monologue you direct, but a river you witness. And sometimes that river carries strange debris from places you didn't even know existed inside you. The truth is, you've been taught to take ownership of every thought that passes through your awareness. You think it, therefore you must have meant it. You imagined it, therefore it must reflect something hidden about you. But that's not true. Your mind is not a locked room with only your belongings inside. It's more like an open field, and in that field winds blow in from everywhere. Your past, your culture, your fears, your subconscious programming, and even your biology. Thoughts don't ask permission, they don't introduce themselves politely, they just arrive. Some feel like you, and some don't. Those are the ones that surprise you. But here's the secret no one ever tells you. A thought is not dangerous unless you believe it. A thought is not true unless you agree with it. A thought is not your identity unless you make it your home. You can observe a thought without absorbing it. You can witness a mental image without needing to analyze or fear it. The power is not in the thought. It's in your relationship to it. So what's really happening when you're hit with a thought that feels foreign or wrong? It's your inner awareness, your deeper intelligence, detecting the dissonance. It's not that you've failed by having a strange thought. It's that you're awake enough to recognize it doesn't belong. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. But let's go even deeper. Many of the thoughts you think are not born in the moment. They're echoes, residues, stored patterns from years, even decades ago. Some are survival mechanisms picked up in childhood. Some are fears you inherited from your parents, your ancestors, your society. Some are mental habits rooted in trauma or past emotional wounding. And others, others are just noise. The brain is a pattern recognition machine, makes connections. Often without logic, often without your consent. This means that a smell, a word, or even a flicker of emotion can trigger a cascade of thoughts that seem to come from nowhere. That's why sometimes you'll think something bizarre or disturbing, and it doesn't feel like it came from you, because it didn't. Not the real you, not the silent presence beneath the mind. It came from your conditioning. It came from somewhere you've never explored. And this is where things get powerful. The moment you stop judging these thoughts and start observing them, they lose their grip. You stop identifying with them. You stop fearing them. You stop wondering if they define you. They don't. They are like random commercials playing on a radio station you didn't choose. You're just passing through the frequency. Have you ever heard someone say, "Your mind is a terrible neighborhood, don't go there alone"? There's truth in that. But not because your mind is evil or broken. It's because you've been taught to believe every whisper, every image, every internal narrative without question. When you detach, when you watch instead of react, you become something much more powerful than the thinker. You become the seer. The most liberating insight is this: even the strangest, darkest, most foreign thought doesn't mean anything about you. A passing mental image is not an intention. A fear is not a prophecy. A flash of anger is not a moral failure. It's a cloud. It comes. It goes. It changes shape. And it leaves no trace unless you hold on to it. The people who suffer most from their thoughts are the ones who haven't been taught this. They think a disturbing thought means something's wrong with them, that a moment of inner chaos means they're dangerous or broken. But if you could lift the curtain on the minds of everyone around you, even the calmest, kindest people, you'd see just how strange and intrusive the mind can be. It's not the thoughts that make the difference. It's the awareness. So what can you do the next time a thought surprises you? First, don't panic. Breathe. Ground yourself in the present. Watch the thought like you'd watch a leaf float down a stream. Don't chase it. Don't judge it. Don't label yourself because of it. Let it pass. Second, speak silently to yourself. This is just a thought. It's not me. It's not truth. It's not permanent. That tiny pause, that act of inner clarity rewires everything. And if the thought repeats, that's okay. Some patterns are persistent because they've been rehearsed 1,000 times in your subconscious. But every time you respond with awareness instead of fear, you loosen their grip. You retrain your brain to become a vessel of presence, not panic. There's also beauty hidden in these surprises. Every foreign thought is a doorway, a chance to understand yourself more deeply. Why did this thought arise? What part of me still believes it, fears it, or clings to it? You don't need to answer with logic. Just sit with the question. Sometimes insight comes not from solving, but from sitting still and allowing the smoke to clear. And here's something radical. The mind isn't just a receiver of internal signals, it may also be picking up external energies. Environments, people, and collective fears can affect what surfaces in your mental field. That means some of the intrusive content isn't even from you at all. You may be feeling the static of the world. Sensitive souls often do. But again, the answer is awareness, not anxiety. When you know who you are beneath the noise, nothing the mind does can shake you. It might get loud, it might get weird, but it can't define you anymore, because you've returned to the center. You've remembered that your true self is not a thought, it's not a voice, it's the still presence that holds it all. So if you ever feel afraid of your own thoughts, I want you to remember this. You are not your mind. You are not the content. You are the container. You are not the storm. You are the open sky. The thoughts will keep coming. Some will feel beautiful, some will feel terrifying, but all of them will pass. And you'll remain calm, watching, unshaken. That's the surprise within. You've probably spent your entire life assuming that there's someone behind the curtain, a real, solid you, pulling the strings, making the choices, analyzing the world, steering the ship of your life through every twist and turn. It feels like there's an inner controller, an executive self, a pilot in the cockpit, a thinker at the wheel. But what if that's just another illusion? What if that central self, that commander you've been told is running the show, is nowhere to be found? Not just metaphorically, but literally. When scientists look into the brain, they don't find a self. When sages look inward through silence and stillness, they don't find a self either. They find thoughts, they find sensations, they find memory, but never a controller, never a center, just processes, just patterns, just experiences happening. Think about it. Have you ever seen your own face without a mirror? Have you ever touched the center of your mind? Have you ever located the part of you that is in control? Not symbolically, not emotionally, actually. Because here's what happens when you try. You close your eyes, you look inward, and you begin to search for the one who is doing the thinking, the choosing, the feeling. And what do you find? Thoughts about a self, sensations associated with a body, memories that construct a narrative, but there's no core, no director's chair, no singular I holding it all together. There's only movement, only awareness, only being. Neuroscience has tried to find the self too. It's looked in the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, the default mode network. It's mapped out thousands of neural pathways and still, no homunculus, no tiny figure behind the controls. Just electricity, just chemistry, just signals being passed and translated into thought and action. And the deeper they go, the more fragmented it becomes. There's no single part of your brain where the you reside. No central hub, just a web, a decentralized orchestra playing itself. So why does it feel like there's someone home? Why does it feel like I am doing this? Because the brain creates a sense of coherence. It tells a story. It binds together memory, sensation, perception, and thought into a continuous narrative. And that narrative says, I am here, I am one, I am in charge. But it's just that, a story. And stories, no matter how convincing, are not reality. They're representations. They're maps, not the territory. The ancient spiritual masters understood this long before MRI machines existed. They would sit in silence for hours, days, years, and slowly peel away every layer of self, not intellectually, but experientially, until finally all that remained was presence. Not a person watching presence, presence itself. No thinker, no doer, just being. They called it awakening, enlightenment, liberation. And it was never about becoming something more. It was always about realizing there was nothing there to begin with, nothing to hold on to, no one to defend, no center to stabilize. Let's put this in more relatable terms. Imagine you're driving a car, and for years you've believed you're gripping the wheel. You're guiding every turn, pressing every pedal, scanning every street. But then one day you realize the wheel isn't connected. The car is moving, but you're not driving it. And suddenly, there's panic. If I'm not in control, what's going to happen to me? But then something softer arises. Relief. Peace. Because now you're free from the burden of having to steer every moment of your life. Now you can trust something deeper, something that moves without force, that guides without pushing. That's what it's like to realize the controller is an illusion. It doesn't mean life becomes random. It means it becomes more organic, less driven by fear, less dominated by the need to manage, fix, and perfect everything, because the manager was never real. It was a role, a mask, a reflex built from habit and fear. But beneath that, beneath the performer, is presence. A presence that doesn't need to be in control to be whole. And here's the paradox. Even though there's no central self, life still happens. You still speak, you still act, you still love. But now it flows. Now it moves, without needing to be managed. Like breath, like the heartbeat, like the rising and falling of waves. Action arises from silence. Choice arises from clarity. But no one's pulling the levers. It's just awareness dancing through form. You've probably felt this before in those moments where everything just worked, when you were in the zone, when words came effortlessly, when you moved with grace, without thinking. That was life without the controller. That was reality flowing through you, unblocked by the illusion of management. That was truth, pure and unfiltered. So what does this mean for you now? It means you can begin to let go of the exhausting need to control everything. You can stop gripping so tightly to the idea that you must make every decision perfectly, plan every moment, and hold everything together. You were never holding it together. You were just telling yourself a story about how tight your grip needed to be. But the universe breathes without being told how. Your body heals without being micromanaged. Your heart beats without asking your permission. Life is already moving. You don't need a controller. You need trust. Trust in the stillness beneath the storm. Trust in the awareness that sees but does not grasp. Trust that your life is not a problem to solve but a mystery to unfold. And once you let go of the illusion of control, something miraculous begins to happen. You stop resisting. You stop fighting your own experience. And in that surrender, clarity arises, insight arises, peace arises, not because you made it happen, but because you got out of the way. The inner controller doesn't disappear because you kill it. It disappears because you stop feeding it. You stop believing its voice. You stop reinforcing its presence with every anxious thought, every need to fix, every panic to hold on. And in the space that remains, you find what was always there. Presence, ease, flow. You don't need to become something new. You just need to see through what you're not. So the next time you feel like life is spinning out of control, remember, there was never a controller to begin with. Just thoughts pretending to be a pilot. Just stories pretending to be truth. And you were always the witness, watching, present, untouched. You've never been the one driving. You've always been the awareness that experiences the ride. And that awareness, that's the real you. Not the self you've been protecting, not the ego you've been inflating or defending, but the silent space behind it all. That's what's real. That's what remains. That's what's free. So breathe, let go, and return to the truth that never needed control to be whole. You feel like a single unified person, don't you? You wake up each day with a name, a history, a body, and a personality. You remember what you like. You know how you usually react. You can point to your fears, your dreams, your past choices and say, "That's me." But let's ask something daring. Is it really? Or is your sense of being a singular you just a convenient illusion stitched together after the fact? A movie composed of many frames, edited in real time, to give the illusion of one smooth, continuous scene. Because when you look closely, honestly, intimately, you'll begin to see the cracks in the story of self, and what you find there will change the way you see everything. Start with this. You're not the same person you were 10 years ago, not mentally, not emotionally, not even physically. Your preferences have changed, your opinions have shifted. The very cells that make up your body have regenerated. You've shed skin, survived heartbreaks, outgrown identities. And yet you still say, "This is me." Why? Because there's a story, a mental glue that holds it all together, a narrative voice that claims each new moment and says, "Ah, yes, this belongs to me." But the story is not the self. The story is just the story. It's like watching a movie where every scene has a different director, different lighting, different tone, but the same actor keeps appearing, so your brain assumes it's one cohesive plot. That actor is the name you respond to, the roles you've accepted. But the directors? They change constantly. Sometimes your body takes the lead, sometimes your emotions do. Other times it's your memory, your environment, your hormones, your fear. And yet, in hindsight, you look back and say, "I did that," as if you were a single, stable character with one continuous thread of identity. But what if you're not? What if you are a collection of shifting patterns, thoughts, feelings, sensations, instincts, stitched together by the brain to create the illusion of a solid self? That doesn't mean you're fake. It means you're fluid, alive, evolving. It means the self you think you are is more like a song than a statue. Beautiful, expressive, but never fixed. Let's go deeper. Have you ever had a moment where you surprised yourself? You acted in a way that felt totally out of character. Maybe you got angry when you're usually calm, or you felt immense joy in a situation where you expected stress. And in that moment, part of you stepped back and said, "That didn't feel like me." But if it wasn't you, who was it? And if it was you, why did it feel unfamiliar? This happens because there is no singular you making all the decisions. There are multiple processes operating beneath awareness. Psychological scripts, emotional triggers, subconscious programming. The part of you that narrates your life, the storyteller, isn't actually running the show. It's just commenting on what already happened. It's the post-game analyst, pretending it was the coach. And yet, despite all this, your mind creates a seamless sense of continuity, a feeling that there is one thread connecting every moment. Neuroscience calls this the narrative self, a function of the default mode network that takes disparate experiences and blends them into a coherent story. It's incredibly useful. It helps you function. It helps you remember who to be in social situations. But it's not the truth. It's a construction. And like all constructions, it can crumble. And when it does, what's left is not a void, it's clarity. There's a reason why spiritual awakening often begins with identity crisis. The moment you stop clinging to the old stories, the mind panics. It says, "If I'm not who I thought I was, then who am I?" But look closer. That question assumes there must be another label to slap on, another box to fit into. What if there isn't? What if you don't need another mask? What if who you are is what's underneath all of them? There's something incredibly freeing about realizing you don't need to be consistent, that your value isn't found in how perfectly your present matches your past, that your worth isn't tied to maintaining a fixed identity. That's ego, that's fear, and that's the voice that says, "Don't change, don't grow, don't break the pattern." But you can break it. You already have. Every time you evolve, every time you heal, every time you surprise yourself with how much you've outgrown the old version of you. And here's the beautiful part. You don't lose anything by letting go of the illusion of a fixed self. You gain presence. You gain fluidity. You become more available to the moment, to life, to love. You stop reacting from a script and start responding from awareness. You don't need to know who you are to show up fully. You just need to be here. You don't need a coherent identity to live truthfully. You just need to be honest. Now, and from that place, you begin to feel something extraordinary. You feel peace. Not because everything makes sense, but because you're no longer trying to force it to. You're no longer squeezing yourself into an identity that was never real to begin with. You're no longer defending a version of yourself that was just a sketch drawn in pencil, never meant to be permanent. So ask yourself, if I didn't remember who I was supposed to be, how would I act today? I didn't have to be consistent with my past. What would I allow myself to feel right now? If I stopped telling myself the story of me, what would I discover beneath the silence? You'd discover presence, awareness, a consciousness that doesn't need a name, a life that doesn't need to be narrated to be lived. You'd find freedom. Because coherence doesn't come from the self, it comes from the moment. And the moment doesn't care who you were yesterday. It only asks, are you awake now? So let the old self dissolve, let the mask drop, let the identity blur around the edges. You are not a fixed object. You are the breath, the space, the stillness in motion. You are life expressing itself through a temporary form. And that form will change, it's supposed to. That's not incoherence, that's evolution, that's art, that's reality. And once you stop gripping the illusion of a singular unchanging self, life gets lighter. There's less to defend, less to prove, less to uphold. You can speak from your heart instead of your history. You can live as an open question instead of a closed answer, because who you are is not a sentence, it's not even a paragraph. It's a presence, and that presence is limitless. Have you ever tried to watch a thought before it forms? Not reflect on it afterward, but actually see it arise. If you sit still in silence, something curious happens. You begin to realize that each thought arrives already formed, like a bird landing suddenly in the middle of your awareness. It's not built piece by piece, syllable by syllable by some inner artisan with a plan. It just appears. Complete, immediate, alive. And if you try to find the hands that made it, the factory where it was assembled, you come up empty. There's nothing, just space, just silence. Because thoughts are not crafted by you, they aren't designed or sculpted, they simply arrive. And you, the observer, the consciousness behind it all, just see them. You don't assemble your thoughts, you receive them, like invisible frequencies picked up by an antenna you didn't build, like echoes in a canyon that you never called out into. This isn't an abstract idea. It's happening now, if you just pause and observe. Thoughts don't knock first. They don't wait politely at the door. They arrive unannounced, without permission. And most of the time they vanish just as quietly. But in between, we often mistake them for orders. We confuse awareness with ownership. We assume that because a thought showed up, it must be ours, it must be true, it must define us. But that's the misunderstanding, mistaking witnessing for authorship. And that simple confusion causes enormous weight, because when you believe you're the source of every thought, you begin to feel responsible for all of them, even the harsh ones, the irrational ones, the dark ones that seem to come from nowhere. But what if presence doesn't mean production? What if you are not the one building thoughts, but the space they pass through? Take a closer look. When a thought like "I'm not good enough" arises, did you plan it? Did you sit down and choose to think that? Or did it simply show up, triggered by a mood, a memory, a scar from the past you didn't know still lingered? If you didn't consciously create it, why assume it belongs to you? Your mind is a dream machine, constantly spinning images, voices, ideas without your direction. Just like in sleep, when dreams unfold without effort, the waking mind does the same. It dreams while you're awake. It produces without asking, not because you told it to, but because that's what it does. That's not a flaw, that's its function. But the real mistake, the painful misunderstanding, is believing that every thought reflects who you are, that if it came up in your mind, you must have meant it. But you didn't. You witnessed it. You saw it arise like smoke from a match you never struck. And the moment you realize this, truly realize it, the heaviness lifts. The shame softens. The fear loosens its grip. Because you're no longer confusing clouds for the sky itself. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're sitting at a cafe and someone at the next table says something offensive. You hear it. It enters your awareness. You might even feel a reaction. But you didn't say it. You didn't believe it. It just entered your field. Thoughts do the same. They speak, you hear. But that doesn't make them you. It doesn't mean you agree. It doesn't mean you must respond. So much inner suffering comes from thinking we have to obey, wrestle with, or suppress every thought. But that's like arguing with every advertisement on TV. You don't need to play that game, you can just observe, you can switch the channel. Or better yet, turn the whole thing off and listen to the silence beneath. There's something deeply freeing in this shift, becoming the observer, not the builder. Realizing that your worth isn't measured by the noise in your head, but by your capacity to be still in the middle of it. That even when the mind races, you can remain grounded. That even when thoughts roar, you don't have to buy into their story. Because believing is a choice. And witnessing is simply awareness. And here's the paradox. The more you rest in awareness, the quieter your thoughts become. Not because you're suppressing them, but because you're not fueling them. You're not resisting or reacting. You're just letting them pass. And in that openness, something beautiful arrives. Clarity. A stillness that's not passive but deeply alive. Insight that rises not from noise but from spaciousness. You'll notice this in meditation or out in nature or in moments of deep presence. The mind still produces, but you're not swept away. Thoughts come and go like waves while you stay rooted like the ocean floor. And that, right there, is what you've been searching for. Not in the thoughts, but in the awareness that holds them all. You're not the craftsman, you're the canvas, the one who holds every shape, every color, every flicker of movement, without being any of it. So what happens when you live from that truth? You stop fearing your mind, you stop trying to sculpt every moment, you begin to open, to relax, to let life move through you, not as something you construct, but as something you allow. Wisdom emerges, not from effort, but from space, not from perfection, but from presence. And when someone asks, where did that come from, you smile and say, I don't know, it just came. That's not ignorance, that's surrender. That's humility. That's alignment with something deeper than the mind. Because while the mind is clever, awareness is infinite. You've spent so much of your life trying to be the planner, the thinker, the one in control. But maybe the real strength isn't in being the craftsman. It's in resting as the witness that has nothing to prove, nothing to fix, nothing to hold. You don't need to sculpt every thought. You don't need to panic when a dark one passes through. You don't need to chase the pleasant ones or argue with the painful ones. You can just let them come, let them go, let them move. Because you are not what moves through you. You are what remains when everything else has moved. And in that stillness, in that deep, undisturbed silence, you are free. So you begin the search, the sacred, serious search to discover the one behind it all, the one who thinks, decides, reacts, and remembers. You sit still, close your eyes, and bring your full attention inward. You ask, who is thinking these thoughts? It seems like a valid question, one that should yield an answer. Surely if thoughts are occurring, someone must be thinking them. Someone must be behind the curtain, typing out sentences into your internal dialogue, piecing together your sense of identity, architecting the decisions you make. And so you go looking for that thinker. But instead of clarity, you encounter something strange. Instead of the thinker, you find another thought. A thought about the search. A thought about you. A mental image of what you believe the thinker should look like. Another narrative. Another fragment of mind pretending to answer the question. And just like that, you've been pulled back into the loop. Because here's the paradox. When you look for the thinker, all you find is the next thought pretending to be the thinker. It's a loop, a trick of awareness, a snake eating its own tail. Every attempt to find the origin of thought simply spawns more thought. Each layer you peel away reveals not a deeper you, but another mask, another voice, another assumption. And yet the mind insists, keep looking. There has to be a core, a center, a final I beneath it all. But there isn't, not in the way you expect. Because the one doing the searching is the same illusion you're trying to expose. It's thought looking for itself, the echo trying to hear its own voice. If you really pay attention, you'll see how quickly this loop operates. You notice a thought. Then a second thought arises that says, I just had a thought. And now there's a sense of identity, a me who had the thought. But pause, who noticed the second thought? Another thought arises, that's me noticing the noticing. And so it continues, recursive, endless, dizzying. Each answer generates another layer of questioning. Each witness spawns another level of interpretation, and none of it leads to a fixed center, just more mirrors facing each other infinitely. This is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. The mind builds selfhood not from substance but from structure. It builds the illusion of identity through loops of feedback, reflection, repetition. Thought reflects on itself and, in doing so, creates the impression of a central observer. But there is no fixed observer. There is only the reflecting, and the longer you chase the observer, the deeper into the maze you go. Try it right now. Close your eyes and ask, who am I? Then listen for the answer. What comes? A thought, a word, an image, a feeling. But none of those are you. They are responses, they are content, they are reactions within awareness. The real you, the presence that asked the question, remains untouched, unspoken, ungraspable, and yet that is the only thing that's constant, not the answer but the space that holds the question. And here's where most people get stuck. The loop becomes so convincing, so fast, that it feels like truth. I think, therefore I am. But even that iconic phrase begins with an assumption. It assumes that thought is evidence of a thinker. But what if it's not? What if thinking is just happening, like rain falling or leaves rustling, and the idea of a thinker is just one more thought riding the wave? This realization can be unsettling because it undermines the entire structure of ego. If there's no thinker, then who am I? If there's no central self, then who's making decisions, who's living this life? But don't rush to fill the gap. Don't try to plug the silence with more thought. Let the silence speak. Let the absence settle. Because what you find there is not nothingness. It's peace. It's freedom. It's the vast, quiet, non-verbal truth that presence doesn't need a self to be whole. You've been taught to think of identity as a noun, fixed, stable, unchanging, but it's a verb, it's movement. It's thought looping on itself, creating the mirage of a center, and when you step out of that loop, you don't disappear. You reappear as awareness, as the unchanging witness, as the one who never needed to be named. In Zen they speak of this with riddles. A monk asks, "What is my original face before my parents were born?" The question points to the reality that who you are has nothing to do with thought, memory, or biology. Your original face is the one behind all faces, the awareness before identity. But you can't answer this with the mind. Every attempt is more recursion, more smoke. You can only experience it in silence, in the pause between thoughts, in the stillness behind the search. This loop of self isn't something to be fixed. It's something to be seen through, and once you see it clearly, it starts to dissolve. Not because you've found a better answer, but because you've stopped mistaking the question for a necessity. You've stopped trying to capture what was never meant to be grasped. So what does this mean for your daily life? It means you don't need to defend a fixed self. You don't need to justify your existence through thought. You can let the loop unravel. You can let the need for self-definition relax. And in that spaciousness, you begin to feel the truth that was hidden all along, not in the center, but in the witnessing. And life doesn't fall apart when you do this. It becomes more fluid, more honest, more spontaneous. You laugh more. You react less. You feel deeply, but you don't get stuck. Because you're no longer playing the game of trying to be someone. You're just being. And isn't that what you've been yearning for all along? So the next time your mind begins its spiral, why did I think that? Who am I really? Am I doing this right? Pause. Breathe. Don't follow the loop. Just notice it. Smile at it. Let it turn in the background like a windmill catching the breeze, but no, you are not the windmill. You are the sky, still, silent, boundless. The thinker is a thought, the searcher is the searched, and the one who truly sees has no name. Sit down, breathe, close your eyes, let the noise of the world fade into the background. You've just entered the stillness, what the ancients called the doorway to the soul. At first it seems like nothing. Silence, a dark screen behind your eyes, a swirling haze of sensations and half-formed thoughts. But then something begins to shift. You start to see it for what it really is. A hall of mirrors, a space where reflections of the self bounce endlessly, each one convincing, each one echoing back a familiar identity, and yet none of them are real, none of them are solid. And the deeper you go, the more you realize there's no one at the center. There never was. This is the quiet truth that meditation reveals, not with thunder or fire, but with stillness. Stillness that strips away all illusions, layer by layer, until only the real remains. And what remains is not a thinker, not a doer, not a name. What remains is awareness. Pure, unmoving, silent, watching. Always watching. At the start, meditation can feel like a struggle. The mind rebels. Thoughts pull you in every direction. You feel restless, unsure, even frustrated. And that's okay. It's part of the unraveling. You're not failing. You're waking up. You're beginning to see that the chatter in your head never needed your attention to exist. It was always there, spinning its stories, and now, for the first time, you're not participating, you're observing. And in that shift, from participant to witness, a sacred distance is born, a space between thought and truth, between reaction and reality. The hall of mirrors is filled with images you've mistaken for yourself. One mirror reflects the achiever, the one who must constantly do, prove, earn. Another shows the wounded child, the one who carries old pain and believes healing must mean fixing. Another reflects the parent, the partner, the friend, the failure, the success. Each reflection feels so real, so personal. But when you look closer, you notice they shimmer, they change, they depend entirely on where you're standing, and the deeper you go, the more you understand. They are not you. They are roles, patterns, echoes. They come and go. But you remain. This is why, in deep meditation, there comes a moment when the mirrors no longer hold your gaze, when their grip on your attention loosens, when you stop trying to polish them, rearrange them, or make them tell a better story. And in that moment of surrender, you turn inward, not toward a mirror, but toward the absence behind them. And what you find there is not a new identity, not a more spiritual version of yourself. What you find is no one. Not no one in a depressing, nihilistic way. No one in the most freeing, sacred way. The absence of a center is not emptiness. It's spaciousness. It's freedom from needing to be anything at all. You've lived your entire life trying to locate yourself in form, in labels and memories. But meditation pulls the curtain back. It shows you that the center you've been seeking doesn't exist as a point. It exists as a field of awareness, vast, unchanging, beyond name or face or form. And once you taste that, even for a moment, something fundamental shifts. You begin to let go of the performance, the inner monologue that constantly evaluates, am I doing this right? Am I being who I'm supposed to be? Starts to dissolve. Because you've seen through the illusion, you've stepped outside the mirrors, and now you're standing in the stillness that was there before the reflections began. There's a reason every spiritual tradition in some form or another emphasizes silence. Because in silence, you stop being the character, you become the screen. And when you're the screen, no movie can harm you, no reflection can define you. You're no longer trying to fix your reflection. You're remembering that you're not in the mirror at all. You are what the mirror reflects. not what it contains. In that space, peace is not something you attain, it's what you uncover. It's not something you earn through discipline or purity. It's your natural state once the noise settles, once the grasping ends, once the search for the self is surrendered, not completed. Because there's nothing to find, only everything to unsee. And here's where the real beauty lies. You don't need to destroy the mirrors. You don't need to reject your identity, your personality, your life. You simply stop mistaking them for the center. You let them arise and fall within awareness, but you don't confuse them with who you are. You become like the sky, unmoved by the clouds that pass through. You begin to live from that space, speak from that space, listen from that space, and everything changes, not because you changed something, but because you stopped pretending to be the one changing. You stopped being the actor and became the awareness of the stage. This is what meditation teaches without words. It shows you what no philosophy can teach, what no belief can replace, that the self you've been defending doesn't exist in the way you thought it did. And the realization of that, not as an idea but as a direct experience, is the most liberating moment of your life. Because now you are free to just be. Free from fixing, free from performing, free from constructing the perfect version of you to present to the world. You realize you don't need to be anyone, you can simply be, and that being is infinite. From this space, life becomes simpler, more alive, more intimate. You're not trapped inside your thoughts anymore. You're watching them pass like leaves on a river. You're no longer searching for the center. You've become the space in which all centers arise and dissolve. You've become awareness itself. And when the world pulls you back, when the mirrors try to seduce you again, that's okay. You smile. You return. You remember that the mirror is just a mirror, and you, the witness, are beyond reflection. There is no one at the center. Only presence, only peace, only the infinite stillness you've always been. You wake up each day and step into a world you believe is real. You see people, places, timelines. You replay conversations, anticipate future events, and think you're engaging with reality. But are you? Or are you watching a movie? One so convincing, so immersive, that you've forgotten you're sitting in the theater. A film that was never real to begin with, only projected by your mind onto the screen of your awareness, because that's what the mind does. It isn't just a machine that computes inputs and outputs. It's a projector. And what it projects are stories, scenes, assumptions, interpretations, endless films stitched together by memory and emotion. You are not seeing the world, you are seeing the mind's version of it. And that version is shaped not by truth, but by perception, by conditioning, by countless invisible scripts you didn't even know were playing. Think of it like this. When you go to the movies, you know the screen isn't real. The images flickering across it are just light and shadow. You don't try to climb into the film or argue with the characters. You watch, feel, and let it pass. But when the mind is the projector, something strange happens. You forget it's a film. You identify with the characters. You take the plot personally. You get caught in the drama, believing every scene is about you, and slowly, unconsciously, you become the movie. But what if you could step back? What if you could see the projector? What if you realized that everything you experience, every fear, every desire, every opinion, is being filtered through a lens that's not absolute, that your perception is not reality, it's just your version of it? This is the awakening that begins when you sit still, when you meditate, when you start to question the voice in your head instead of following it blindly. You begin to see the flicker of the real. You begin to feel the difference between what's truly present and what's being imagined. You realize the mind doesn't show you what's there. It shows you what it expects, what it's been trained to see. And more often than not, that training came from fear, from trauma, from repetition, not truth. The mind will say, they're judging me, and suddenly the film rolls, flashbacks, assumptions, projections. But are they really judging you? Or is that scene just being replayed from another time, another pain? The mind will whisper, I'm not good enough, and you'll be flooded with a montage of all your perceived failures. But are those moments real now, or just yesterday's reel stuck on repeat? This is the suffering mistaking the movie for the world. But you are not bound to this illusion. You can step out. You can turn and face the projector. You can begin to see that the light you thought was reality is just light, and the screen you thought was the world is just your own awareness reflecting back your thoughts. This doesn't mean life stops happening, or that you become passive. It means you stop reacting to a fiction. You stop fighting shadows. You engage with life as it is, not as your mind tells you it should be. You become available to the present moment, unfiltered, unprojected. And what you find there is astonishing. Clarity, peace, a world far less chaotic than your thoughts ever allowed you to see. And here's what's wild. The projector doesn't need to be shut down. It's not your enemy. It's a tool, a creative engine. It can dream, imagine, explore, but only when you know it's the projector. Only when you're no longer hypnotized by the film. Because when you're lost in the story, you become reactive, defensive, fearful. You start editing the film while it plays, trying to fix every frame, control every outcome. But when you know it's just a movie, you stop editing and start observing. And observation is the seed of transformation. You begin to see that the projector has no power without your attention. The film only continues when you keep watching. And you realize that between each frame there is stillness, silence, a space untouched by thought. That space is your true home, not the narrative, not the noise, but the quiet watching that remains when the screen goes dark. This is what mystics point to when they talk about awakening. It's not becoming something new, it's remembering what you are underneath the film, realizing the mind's movie is not life. It's a layer over life, and that layer can be beautiful, yes, but also misleading, painful, delusional. Your task is not to destroy the projector, but to stop identifying with the movie. You can still enjoy the film, you can still feel it, but now you know you're in the audience, not trapped in the story. And here's the gift. When you stop identifying with the movie, you gain the power to change it, not by force, but by awareness. You begin to choose different scripts. You let go of the old reels, you start telling the truth, and the truth doesn't come from thought, it comes from presence, from the awareness that sees the film and chooses peace anyway. So the next time your mind starts projecting stories of fear, of judgment, of shame, pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this the world or is this just the movie again? Can I turn and face the projector? Can I sit in the stillness between frames? And if you can, even for a breath, the whole film shifts, the whole theater quiets, and you remember, I was never the movie. I am the light behind it. You've been watching the film for so long you forgot you were the screen, but now you remember, and in that remembrance, you are free. There's a voice inside your head, always talking, always narrating, always explaining. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, and sometimes even in your dreams, it's there. It comments on what you see, what you feel, what might happen, what should have happened. It gives you feedback on every move, holds opinions about everyone you meet, judges, compares, plans, regrets, praises and criticizes. And for most of your life, you've assumed that voice is you. But it's not. That narrator? It's just part of the movie. It's the voiceover added to the film of your life, layered on top of raw experience like subtitles on a silent scene. You think it's necessary, guiding, defining, protecting you, but in truth it's just describing what already is, sometimes accurately, often not. And the more you listen without questioning, the more you confuse narration with reality. Let's get clear, the narrator is not evil. It's not trying to harm you, it's a function of the mind, a survival tool, an internal analyst developed to help you navigate life. But somewhere along the way that tool became an identity. The voice became the self, and now you believe that whatever it says must be true. But here's the problem, the voice is inconsistent. It changes depending on your mood, hormones, past experiences, and childhood conditioning. It praises you one moment and attacks you the next. It tells you to relax, then accuses you of being lazy. It says you're doing great, then whispers it's never enough. If a friend talked to you the way your internal narrator does, you'd walk away. So why do you keep listening? Because you've never stepped back far enough to realize there's a difference between the voice and the awareness hearing it. There's a space between the narrator and the listener, and that space is who you really are. Don't take this on faith. See it for yourself. Sit quietly. Let the voice talk. Let it ramble, critique, imagine, worry, and just listen. Not to what it's saying, but to the fact that you are hearing it. Feel the distance between the voice and the one aware of the voice. Notice how the voice keeps talking, but you are not moving, not doing, not thinking it into existence. It arises on its own, like wind through the trees, and you are the silence beneath the wind. This realization is subtle, but it changes everything. Because once you see that you are the awareness, and not the narrator, the entire game shifts. The voice may keep talking, but it no longer controls or defines you. It becomes background noise, like a radio in another room. Sometimes helpful, sometimes annoying, but never who you are. And here's the beautiful part: once you stop identifying with the voice, it begins to soften, it becomes less aggressive, less frantic. Because its power came from your attention, your belief, your investment. You kept feeding it, so it kept growing, but now you stopped. Now you're watching. Now you're resting in the seat of awareness. And the narrator knows it can't run the show anymore. This is where real peace begins. Not when the voice disappears, but when you stop mistaking it for yourself. When you can sit with a storm of thoughts and still feel untouched. When you can hear the voice say, "You're not doing enough," and smile gently, knowing that voice has nothing to do with your truth. It's just the mind doing what minds do. This shift doesn't mean you become passive or shut down reason. It means you become discerning. You choose which thoughts deserve your energy. You listen when the voice is wise, and you smile when it's ridiculous. You stop reacting to every sentence it utters. You let it pass like traffic in the distance. And from that stillness something extraordinary emerges. A deeper intelligence. Not the frantic problem-solving of the narrator, but the quiet knowing of presence. A knowing that doesn't speak in words, but in clarity. A knowing that guides not with panic or pressure, but with peace. This is intuition. This is alignment. This is truth arising from silence, not from noise. You've lived so long with the narrator as your default that silence may feel strange, even scary, but that's only because you've confused stillness with emptiness. It's not empty, it's full of space, of presence, of possibility. And once you grow comfortable in that space, you begin to trust it. You begin to realize you don't need constant commentary to live well. You don't need an inner monologue to be whole. You just need to be aware, present, open. The voice may never stop completely, and that's okay. It's not about silencing the narrator. It's about remembering it's just a voice, not a verdict, not a command, not a self. So the next time it speaks, when it tells you you're failing, falling behind, or not worthy, don't fight it. Don't believe it. Don't panic. Just listen, observe, and remember, that's not me. That's just the narrator. The more you do this, the more you reclaim your freedom. The freedom to choose your own inner weather, to trust your awareness, to live without being dictated by a voice that was never you to begin with. You are not the one talking, you are the one listening, and in that listening, you are free. Stop. Just for a moment, close your eyes if you can. Let everything fall away, the to-do lists, the names, the roles, the labels. Drop it all. What's left? Not the thoughts that keep spinning, not the emotions that rise and fall like waves, not even the sense of a personality, crafted over time like a well-worn mask. What's left is you, not as an idea, not as a narrative, but as presence, still, silent, watching. That's who you really are. Not the story playing on the screen, but the screen itself. the unmoving, untouchable field that allows the story to appear and disappear without ever being stained by it. This is one of the most liberating truths you can realize. You are not your story, you are the space in which the story unfolds, and that space is unbreakable. It's not made of thought. It's not disturbed by emotion. It's not shaped by circumstance. It simply is. It's the constant in the chaos, the silence beneath the noise, the presence beneath every performance you've ever given, every identity you've ever tried on, every role you've ever played. Imagine sitting in a movie theater. The screen lights up, characters speak, plots twist, emotions surge, and you're captivated. You laugh, you cry, you forget, just for a moment that none of it is actually happening. But then the credits roll, the lights come up, and the screen is still there, unchanged. It held all that intensity, all that drama, and yet remained unaffected. That's what your awareness is. That's what you are. The screen, not the script. The presence, not the persona. Your story is always changing. One moment you're confident, the next you're full of doubt. One year you're thriving, the next you're rebuilding. One chapter you're in love, the next you're healing. But through it all, something remains constant. Something watches. Something endures. And that something is you. Not the you the world sees, but the true self. The unnameable presence behind the scenes, silent, calm, eternal. The mistake we make is believing the story is the self, that if the story is painful, we must be broken. If the story is chaotic, we must be lost. If the story doesn't make sense, we must be failing. But all of that is just narrative, just plot lines created by the mind. And the mind is a master storyteller. It edits, dramatizes, skips parts, projects. But it never shows the whole truth. It can't because it's part of the story, too. The truth lives in the awareness watching all of it unfold. The quiet noticing, the wordless presence, the one that doesn't react but simply sees. That's the real self. That's what never leaves, never changes, never needs to be fixed. And when you rest there, when you remember you are the screen, you stop suffering over the story. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. In fact, quite the opposite. You feel more fully, more freely, because you're no longer afraid of the emotions passing through. You're no longer gripping them, identifying with them, getting pulled into their current. You see them for what they are. Temporary, like scenes on a screen. Powerful, yes, but not personal, not permanent. This is the freedom that comes with awakening, not the absence of life's challenges, but the presence of perspective. The ability to witness the mind's chatter without becoming it. The ability to feel emotions without drowning in them. The ability to experience every scene in the story without losing yourself to the drama. And when the mind tries to pull you back in, when it says, this moment is too much, you're not handling it right, this shouldn't be happening, you return to the screen. You return to the silence. You remember, this is a story, and I am the awareness it's happening within. And that shift, subtle, quiet, profound, brings you back home. You start to see that the real you has never been scared, never been broken, never been unworthy. Those were just roles the story gave you, roles you played so convincingly that you forgot they weren't real. But the screen never believed the lie. The screen always knew the truth. It just waited, patiently, for you to remember. And the more time you spend resting in that awareness, the more your story begins to shift, not because you're forcing it, but because you're no longer fueling the patterns that keep it looping. You stop trying to control the narrative, and you start living from presence. And presence brings peace. It brings clarity. It brings love. Not as a plot point, but as a natural expression of who you are beneath the story. And something else begins to dawn. You're not just the screen for your story. You're the screen for all of it. The joy and the pain, the love and the loss, the light and the shadow. You can hold all of it, witness all of it, and still remain whole. Because what you are can't be defined by content. It's deeper, it's wider, it's beyond all of it. You are the silence behind the words. the stillness beneath the movement, awareness that watches, without judgment, without resistance, without needing to understand. And when you live from that place, when you embody the screen instead of the story, you begin to shine, not because you're trying to be seen, but because your light can finally come through, unobstructed. You speak with clarity, you move with intention, you love without fear. Because you're not trapped in the character anymore, you're free. So let the story unfold, let the plot twist, let the emotions rise and fall, but never forget who you are. You are not the story, you are the screen. And in that remembering, you are already home. There's a voice that says, I'm the one thinking, I'm in charge here, I'm directing this mind. It feels convincing, familiar, solid. But if you sit with it, if you truly observe, something strange starts to happen. That I begins to shift, it begins to fade, and what's left is only the echo, the outline, the residue of a self you never quite find. You realize the thinker, this voice you believe to be your center, is just a shadow puppet moving, speaking, pointing. But when you shine the light of awareness directly upon it, you see the truth. There's no hand inside the puppet, no real source behind the shadow, only light, only motion, only emptiness pretending to be someone. This realization isn't abstract, it's felt. It's unsettling at first, to witness how easily the mind constructs identity. You catch a thought like, I shouldn't have said that, and without question you assume there must be an I who thought it. But look closer. Who exactly thought that thought? Can you locate the source? Can you find the center? No matter where you look, you find more thoughts, more echoes, more narration about the thinker. But the thinker itself, nowhere. It's always just out of reach. And that's the trick. That's the illusion that keeps the echo going. You keep chasing a voice that never had a mouth to begin with. It's like hearing footsteps in an empty house. You rush to find the person walking, but every room is vacant, every hallway silent. The sound came from somewhere, but not from someone. It was an echo, a leftover vibration bouncing through the architecture of the mind. That's what the thinker is, an echo of thoughts about thoughts, a recursive loop that pretends to have a core but never actually does. And yet, we build our entire sense of self around that echo. We say, I'm the one thinking, I'm the one deciding, I'm the one who knows. But look at it. Really look. The thoughts come unannounced. The decisions arise before the reasoning catches up. The knowing isn't constructed, it appears. You are not driving the process, you are witnessing it. And yet the thinker claims authorship. It takes credit for the thunder it never created. It wears the crown without ever having earned it. This is not a flaw in you, it's a function of the mind. The mind craves continuity. It wants a narrator, a central figure to tie it all together. So it builds one, piece by piece, thought by thought, until it has a full silhouette to point to and say, that's me. But the silhouette isn't solid, it's not a body, it's not a soul, it's not anything you can touch. It's a collection of shadows that appear real until you turn and face the light. And when you do, something profound happens. The fear dissolves, the urgency to defend, to control, to prove, all of it fades. Because there's nothing to defend, no character to protect, no central self that could ever be harmed. There's just awareness, just presence, just the space where the shadow once danced. You might wonder, but if there's no thinker, then how am I living? How am I functioning? And the answer is beautifully simple. Life doesn't need a central self to flow. Just like the heart beats without your permission, just like the lungs breathe without your command, the mind moves. Thoughts come, choices are made, actions unfold. Not from a puppet master, but from a field of intelligence beyond the personal, a field that doesn't need a name to operate. When you recognize this, you don't become passive, you become free. Free from the pressure to be perfect, free from the need to control every thought, free from the constant internal judgment. Because now you see, the judge was just a puppet too, just another echo. And when the echoes lose their power, what remains is silence, stillness, presence, the truth of what you are. You are not the shadow that talks, you are the light that reveals the shadow. This understanding doesn't make life less vivid, it makes it more alive, more immediate. You no longer get lost in the back and forth of identity. You meet each moment with openness, with honesty, without pretense. And in that space, love flows, clarity arises, compassion grows. Not because the thinker commands it, but because it's your natural state, unclouded, undisturbed. And when the echo returns, as it surely will, I should be better. They don't understand me. I'm the only one struggling. You don't fight it. You don't believe it. You simply notice it, smile at it, and let it pass. Because now you know, that's not you. That's just the shadow, the puppet, the echo of a self that never needed to exist. You are not the voice. You are the awareness hearing it. You are not the thinker. You are the space where thought arises and disappears, and in that space you are free. There's a subtle discomfort most people carry, one they rarely name but constantly feel. It arises in quiet moments, when the music stops, when the phone is put down, when the noise fades. It's the discomfort of being alone with yourself, no distractions, no voices, no tasks to chase, just silence. And for many, silence feels empty, awkward, maybe even threatening. So they run from it, fill it, mask it. They turn up the volume of their lives because something inside whispers, don't stop, don't slow down, don't listen too closely. But what if silence isn't what you've been taught to fear? What if it's not emptiness at all but fullness in disguise? What if beneath all the noise, the thoughts, the roles, the expectations, there's a stillness that holds the truth of who you are, not as a concept, not as a voice, but as presence, pure, quiet, undeniable, and always there. The truth is, silence isn't absence, it's essence. It's the space where the mind dissolves and the real self emerges, not as a thought, but as awareness, still, steady, infinite. It's not the silence of nothingness. It's the silence of being, the kind that doesn't need to explain or prove itself, the kind that waits patiently, lovingly behind every sound, every thought, every heartbeat, for you to return. But the mind is loud. It's always generating content, trying to keep you focused on the surface, on the chatter, the commentary, the next thing. It convinces you that silence is unproductive, boring, pointless. And so, moment after moment, you choose the noise. Not because it satisfies you, but because it distracts you. Because silence brings you face to face with something deeper, something older, something more real than anything the mind could ever invent. Stillness, the stillness beneath the noise. And it's in this stillness that you meet yourself. Not the self you've curated for the world, not the self assembled from memories and fears, but the one that existed before language, before identity, before thought. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply is, watching, waiting, inviting you inward. To touch that stillness is to remember that you are not broken. You are not lacking, you are not the storm of thoughts that passes through your mind. You are the sky that holds them, the space that cradles all experience without resistance. You've spent so much of your life trying to be someone, trying to live up to an image, fulfill a narrative, meet a standard. But the stillness asks nothing of you. It only asks that you stop, breathe, listen, and in that listening, it welcomes you home. Stillness is not a state you create. It's a state you uncover. It's what remains when the noise settles, when the mind softens, when the need to be something dissolves. And once you touch it, even for a breath, everything shifts. You begin to see that peace isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. Something that arises naturally when you stop interfering, when you surrender your attachment to the voice in your head, and rest in the silence beneath it. Most avoid this place because it feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel unsafe, but that's only because the ego can't survive in stillness. It has nothing to cling to, nothing to control. Stillness doesn't validate your story. It dissolves it. It doesn't feed your identity, it strips it away, not to punish you, but to reveal you, to free you from the burden of pretending, to show you that you never needed to be anything more than presence itself. And presence is enough, more than enough. It's the source, the root, the quiet pulse beneath all experience. And in that space, healing happens not through effort, but through surrender. You stop fighting, stop fixing, stop performing, and in the absence of effort, truth arises, wholeness arises. You see yourself clearly, not as a name, not as a personality, but as awareness, still, silent, complete. Silence holds everything, every joy, every wound, every longing. It doesn't push anything away. It welcomes all of you. And when you rest in it, you feel that welcome. You feel the embrace of your own being, not as a concept, but as a vibration, as a knowing, as home. And from that home, you can live, you can speak, create, connect, not as someone trying to prove their worth, but as someone rooted in their being, someone who knows they are already whole. The noise may still come, and that's okay, but now it passes through you. It no longer defines you, because you've touched the stillness, you've met the silence, and you know who you are. So the next time the world gets loud, when the thoughts spin, when the pressure builds, when the urge to distract yourself rises, pause. Just pause. And listen. Beneath the noise, can you feel it? That quiet presence, that gentle stillness, it's always there, waiting, watching, loving. You are not the noise, you are the stillness beneath it. And in that stillness, you are free. You were born as presence, no name, no role, no story. Just open awareness, fresh and unfiltered, experiencing the world without interpretation. You didn't know yourself as anything, you simply were. But as you grew, the thoughts came. Slowly at first, like whispers, then more frequently, louder, more defined. They told you who you were, what you should be, what was acceptable, what was wrong, and with each thought a new layer was added, a veil, a filter, a screen pulled across the raw light of your awareness. Without even realizing it, you began to forget the witness. You began to mistake the layers for yourself. This is the forgetting we all go through, the forgetting of what we truly are, not out of malice or weakness, but because the world rewards identity, not awareness. It teaches you to build yourself from the outside in, to gather roles, achievements, opinions, and ideas, and with each mental label another layer forms between you and the witness that is always watching, always present, always untouched by thought. The more thoughts you collect, the more buried the witness becomes. You no longer see through your eyes, you see through your mind. You don't feel emotions directly, you interpret them, categorize them, attach stories to them. You don't meet life as it is, you meet it through your beliefs about it. And so your experience becomes a mental projection, rather than a lived reality. Thoughts are not the problem, they are not the enemy, they are just tools. But when you forget you are the one watching the thoughts, you become enslaved to them. You mistake their voice for your own, you confuse their content with your truth, and slowly, subtly, you become a character in the story they are telling. You become the image, not the light, the thought, not the witness. This is why silence feels so strange when you first encounter it, because it peels the layers away. It shows you how much of your life you've lived through filters. It reveals the raw, wordless truth beneath all mental constructions. And at first that can feel terrifying. Who are you without your thoughts, without your opinions, your memories, your goals? It feels like death. But it's not. It's a return, a remembering, a reconnection with what never left. Because the witness has always been here. It was here before your first thought, and it will remain after your last. It is the constant, the ground beneath the shifting sands, the stillness beneath the waves. And when you touch it, when you remember it, you feel a peace that no thought can offer. A peace that doesn't come from getting anything right, but from seeing clearly. Each thought is like a cloud. Some are bright and beautiful, some dark and heavy, but all of them pass. None of them are the sky. And you are the sky. You are the space in which thought arises and dissolves. You are not the content, you are the context. And the more you rest in that context, the more clarity you find. The process of awakening is not about having better thoughts. It's about remembering the witness behind them. It's about noticing the gap, the space between one thought and the next, and realizing that space is you. That stillness is not the absence of thought. It's the presence of awareness. The awareness that sees thought come and go without grabbing it, without becoming it, without mistaking it for the self. And yet, forgetting is so easy. A single thought can sweep you away, a judgment, a memory, a desire. And suddenly you're back in the story, playing the part, reacting, defending. But that's okay. Forgetting is not failure. It's part of the dance. What matters is that you remember again, that you return to the witness, that you step out of the thought and back into the awareness that was watching the whole time. This remembering is not an effort, it's a letting go. You don't find the witness by thinking about it, you find it by relaxing the need to think at all, by softening your grip on the mind and allowing yourself to fall inward, into stillness, into silence, into the presence that never changes. And when you live from that place, when you identify with the witness rather than the thought, you become unshakable, not because nothing affects you, but because you know you are more than what's affected. You can meet pain without becoming it. You can meet joy without clinging to it. You can meet uncertainty without collapsing. Because you are not the wave, you are the ocean. Each thought is a wave, rising and falling. But you are the deep, the vast, the formless presence beneath it all. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you act from clarity rather than compulsion. You speak from stillness rather than fear. You live not as a thought-based persona, but as an embodied presence, a presence that doesn't need to defend itself, because it knows it cannot be harmed. Thoughts will still come, that's their nature, but now you see them for what they are. Passing clouds. Echoes, not commands, not truths, just energy moving through awareness. And with each one that passes without attachment, another layer dissolves, another veil is lifted, and the witness shines a little more clearly. Eventually, the boundary between the witness and the world begins to dissolve. You no longer feel separate from life. You feel merged with it, not lost in it, but deeply connected. You become the space that holds it all, the stillness in which all things arise. And from that space, love flows. Compassion flows, not as emotions, but as your very nature. You were never the layers. You were never the thoughts. You were never the roles. You were always the witness. And now, you remember. There is a self within you that cannot be named. It doesn't belong to your past, isn't shaped by your opinions, and carries no badge of identity, no history, no personal brand. You can't point to it or describe it with language, because the moment you speak of it, you've already stepped away from it. It's not the words you use, it's the silence behind them. It's not the face in the mirror, it's the seeing behind the eyes. This self, the one beyond identity, memory, and personality, is not something you become. It's what you've always been, quietly waiting to be remembered beneath the noise. Most of life is lived through labels. I am this, I am that, I believe, I think, I feel. You've spent years constructing this idea of me, building walls of belief, filling rooms with memory and decorating it all with personality. It feels solid, but it's not. It shifts with your moods, changes with age, and depends entirely on what others reflect back to you. That self is not the real you. It's a costume stitched together by the mind with threads of language and time. It may serve a function in the world, but it is not the essence of your being. The true self, the one that cannot be spoken, is something else entirely. It doesn't speak, perform, or seek recognition. It simply exists, like a flame that never flickers. You don't find it by thinking about it. You find it by falling beneath the thinking, beneath the noise, into that quiet space where thought has no foothold, where words dissolve and time has no meaning. That space is presence. And presence is what you are when there's nothing left to define. Try this. Let go of your name, just for a moment. Let go of your past, your memories, your ideas of who you are and what you're supposed to be. Let go of your personality traits. Introvert, extrovert, funny, anxious, spiritual, skeptical. Let it all go. Who's left? Who's still here, aware of this moment? That one, that quiet witness, that open space, is the self that cannot be spoken. It's the one watching you read these words. The one feeling the breath rise and fall. The one that was present when you were a child and remains present now, untouched by everything you've lived through. This self has no opinion, no agenda, no form. But it isn't distant. It's closer than your skin. It doesn't live in your thoughts, but it sees every thought come and go. It isn't your story, but it knows every chapter. And the more you return to it, the more you feel its peace. Not the peace that comes from control, but the peace that comes from surrender. From knowing you are not the shifting sands, but the stillness beneath them. Naturally, the mind resists this. It wants definitions, labels, something solid to grasp. It doesn't trust what it can't name. But the truth of what you are lives beyond the mind. It can't be captured or owned. It's like trying to hold the wind in your hands. Grasp, and it slips through your fingers. But when you stop grasping, you feel it all around you. And in that feeling there's a kind of homecoming, a return to something so familiar it feels ancient. Here you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to achieve or even understand. You just need to be. And being is enough. Because when you rest as presence, you realize that your deepest self doesn't come and go. It doesn't break, age, or suffer. What suffers is the personality, the part wrapped in thought, chasing approval, clinging to identity. But beneath it all is presence, untouched, unmoved, free. When you live from presence, something miraculous happens. Life unfolds without resistance. You stop arguing with the moment. You no longer need to defend who you are, to explain, justify, or prove. You simply meet life as it is, from the space of what you truly are, and in that meeting, there's grace, there's spaciousness, and there is love. Not the love of the story, but the love of being, the knowing that everything arises in the same silent awareness, that your joy and your sorrow, your triumphs and your losses all unfold within the same spacious field, and you don't need to hold it all together, because you were never the one doing the holding. Presence holds everything. And presence is you. This is why silence matters, not because it's peaceful, but because it's true. It reveals the self that words can't reach, the self that has been watching all along. Every time you return to it, even for a breath, you peel back another layer of illusion. You remember. And remembering is all that's ever been needed. So who are you really? Not a name, not a story, not a voice in your head. You are the stillness behind every movement, the awareness behind every thought, the presence behind every mask. You are the self that cannot be spoken, and you always have been. There's a silence that isn't just the absence of sound. It's not the hush of a quiet room or the pause between words. It runs deeper, wider, more vast. It arrives when the mind itself falls silent, when thought ceases, and even the idea of I begins to fade. And in that silence something extraordinary is revealed. You're still here, even without a single thought. even when there's no voice narrating, no identity to cling to, no memory to hold on to. Something remains, a presence, a witnessing, a beingness that cannot be denied. That is the paradox. The thoughts disappear, but the one who sees that they're gone does not. So who is that? The mind is quick to answer, quick to scramble for an explanation. It's me, of course it's me. But that answer is just another thought, a reflex, a reach for something familiar. Yet, if you resist the urge to explain, if you stay in the silence and allow it to be what it is, you begin to feel it not as a concept, but as a direct experience. You are there, not because you've defined yourself, but because you simply are. And that you is different. It doesn't think, it doesn't label, it doesn't judge, it just is. Still, aware, awake. That is what you've been searching for. Not another version of your story, not a better identity or more evolved persona, but the absence of identity altogether. The stunning realization that what you truly are needs no story to exist. It doesn't need validation or confirmation. It is self-evident. It reveals itself in the quiet behind the mind. This is why deep meditation can feel so mysterious. You sit in stillness and slowly the thoughts dissolve. One by one they fall away, and suddenly there is nothing. No name, no image, no concept. Just space. Vast and silent. And yet you are still unmistakably present. In fact, you're more present than ever, not because you're doing, but because you've stopped doing. You're not the thoughts anymore. You are the space in which thoughts arise and disappear. In that space, a natural question arises. If there are no thoughts here, then who or what is experiencing this? That question points directly to the mystery. Because something is aware, something knows, something exists prior to thinking, but it's not a person, it's not a mind. It has no shape, no name, no story. It can't be owned. It simply is. You can't describe it without reducing it. You can't capture it without limiting it, because it's not another object in your life. It's the context in which all of life unfolds. It's the silence in which every sound arises, the knowing before knowledge, the light before any image, the being before the doing. And yet, paradoxically, it's also you, not the personal you, not the shifting collection of memories and habits and traits, but the essential you, the foundational you, the one that was here before you knew your name, before the world told you who to be, the one that remains after every layer is stripped away. This realization isn't something to believe, it's something to experience, and when you do, everything changes. Because you finally understand, you are not lost when the thoughts are gone. You are not erased by silence. You are revealed in it. What fades was never truly you. What remains is. There's a fear buried deep in most people that if thinking stops, they will vanish. That without the mind's noise they will lose themselves. But the opposite is true. You don't disappear, you emerge. You don't lose yourself. You lose the false self, the mental image built from fear and repetition, and in its place you meet what has always been here, watching, holding, being. You may sense it in subtle ways, in the pause between breaths, in the quiet of early morning, in the awareness that lingers just after a long exhale. These are not just moments of calm, they are doorways into presence, glimpses of the ground beneath the mind. And with time and practice, those moments stretch. They deepen, until you begin to live from that space, not just visit it. And from that space, life begins to feel different. Not because your circumstances change, but because your perception changes. You stop living through the filters of judgment and expectation. You meet the world directly, as it is, without commentary, without control. And in that direct contact with reality, there is peace. Not a fragile peace that depends on external calm, but an unshakable peace rooted in the truth of what you are. You are not the changing content of your experience. You are the awareness in which all content comes and goes. Even in chaos, that awareness remains untouched. Even in sorrow, it stays whole. Even when the surface of your life is turbulent, the depths are still. That's the paradox. The silence is not empty, it's full, it holds everything and yet clings to nothing. So when you sit in silence and the thoughts fade, don't panic, don't rush to fill the space. Let it open, let it deepen, let it reveal what you've always been. Feel the vastness beyond your name, the freedom of not having to fix or explain. Feel the quiet joy of simply being. You don't need a thought to exist. You don't need an identity to be. You are already here. Already whole, already home. That which remains in silence is your true nature. That which notices the absence of thought is the ever-present awareness behind it all, and the more you rest in that awareness, the more you remember it was never gone. You simply got lost in the noise. But the silence has always been waiting, not to erase you, but to reveal you. You are the one who remains when all else falls away. You are the stillness at the center of every storm. You are the silence that listens to the silence, and in that you are free. You've spent a lifetime collecting pieces, names, roles, memories, preferences. You've built an intricate mosaic and called it me. Every experience added a tile. Every success, every wound, every label given by others. You gathered them all and shaped them into an identity. It feels solid, familiar, even necessary. But what happens when that structure begins to dissolve? What happens when everything you've believed yourself to be starts to fall away and you're still here? There comes a moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes gradual, when the scaffolding of self begins to tremble. A quiet question arises. Who am I without this job, without this name, without this story? And for a flicker of time, everything feels uncertain. Not in a frightening way, but in a way that opens a door. Because behind the identity something else waits, something quieter, something more real than anything you've ever clung to. And once you glimpse it, you begin to see. Identity is a costume, not your core. It's a temporary configuration, not your true self. Start with your name. You've carried it your whole life, but you didn't choose it. It was given to you, a sound used to get your attention. Yet when you hear it, who is the one noticing? That one doesn't need a name. That one remains even when the name changes. Look deeper, your age, your history, your culture. These too were inherited, shaped around you like a shell. They've influenced your experience, but they are not you. They are garments, useful in the world, but not your essence. Even your memories, the stories you tell yourself about who you are unstable. They shift with time. They blur. They get revised, reshaped by emotion and distance. You think they define you, but they don't. They reflect moments that have already passed. They are echoes, not identities. And yet we build our sense of self upon them, as if what has passed could fully explain what's here now. Then there's personality. I'm shy, I'm outgoing, I'm logical, I'm sensitive. But who says that? Who notices those traits? Who observes how you shift in different situations? That awareness, the witness, doesn't change with your personality. It sees the changes, it sees the reactions. You are not the personality, you are the one who sees it arise and pass. And when you allow your identity to unravel gently, honestly, you discover something profound. Everything you thought was essential to who you are can fall away, and still you remain. When the thoughts stop, you're still here. When the story fades, you're still here. When the roles dissolve, something deeper endures. Not something that can be described, but something undeniable, something immovable, something real. That's the paradox of identity. You believe you'll lose yourself if you let go, but the only thing you lose is the illusion. What you gain is freedom, spaciousness, clarity, the realization that who you truly are doesn't need maintenance or improvement. It simply is. Pure presence, unconditioned awareness, not bound by past or future, not defined by image or function, just here, just now. And in that being, a deeper kind of peace emerges. Not the fragile peace that comes from control or approval, but the indestructible peace of not needing a mask. You begin to move through the world without armor. You speak without defending. You live without performing. Because you no longer confuse the identity with the self. This doesn't mean you discard identity completely. It means you stop gripping it. You wear it like clothing, slightly, for a time. You use names and roles when needed. You remember your past without getting lost in it. You express your personality without becoming trapped in it. And beneath it all, you rest in the quiet awareness that needs no name at all. This is the heart of true spiritual freedom. Not escaping life, but seeing through the illusions that bind you. You stop trying to become something and start realizing what you already are. Something vast, something formless, something beyond words. And from this clarity, compassion begins to rise. Because you see others wearing their masks too, gripping their stories, protecting their personas, doing their best to be someone. And instead of judgment, you feel love. You feel understanding. You feel the innocence of it all, the human longing to belong, to matter, to be seen. And from your centerless center, you offer space, stillness, presence. You don't need to fix their story or your own. You simply need to see it clearly for what it is, a temporary expression of something far greater, and that greater something is you. So let the unraveling happen, let the edges blur, let the old identities fall away. It may feel like loss at first, like ground disappearing beneath your feet, but what's really happening is the return to groundlessness, the timeless space where your truest self has always waited, not as an object, not as an idea, but as the open field of being. You are not the identity you wear. You are not the history you carry. You are not the name, the face, the thoughts. You are what remains when all of that dissolves. And in that remaining, you are free. ChatGPT said, "There is a point on the inward path where even silence itself begins to shed its skin. A point where stillness stops being a practice or a pause and becomes something else entirely, a revelation. You begin to sense it not as a moment of quiet, but as the final layer of reality, the bedrock beneath identity, beneath thought, beneath even awareness of time. It's not a silence that comes and goes, not the gap between words. It's what remains when words themselves no longer make sense, when the ticking of the clock stops registering as a rhythm, when the mind's grip on sequence and structure dissolves into something immeasurable. This is the stillness beyond stillness, the last layer, the place where all else falls away. We spend so much of life on the surface, engaged in motion, chasing meaning, solving problems, narrating experience, and beneath all of it a rhythm pulses that we rarely hear. Because it's not a rhythm you listen for with your ears, it's the hum of being itself, the eternal now, timeless, spaceless, before thought, before emotion, before memory, before even has any meaning. And when everything else is stripped away, this stillness stands untouched. Language cannot reach it because language is built on contrast, subject and object, beginning and end, sound and silence. But in the last layer there's no separation, no division to describe. You don't speak about stillness. You merge into it. And in that merging there's nothing left to say, only presence. Only the isness of now. Time disappears here, not because you traveled somewhere else, but because time was never real to begin with. It was a perception layered over reality, a measurement used to navigate the world. Useful, yes, but not fundamental. The deeper you go into stillness, the more that measurement breaks down. Seconds stop stacking. Memories lose their sequence. Future loses its meaning. And what's left is this infinite, motionless now that never began and will never end. It's not linear, it doesn't progress, it just is, always has been, always will be. And you are that, not a passenger in time, not a figure moving through events. You are the presence in which time appears. You are the field in which moments come and go. But you do not move, you do not age. You do not change, not in this layer. In this stillness, you are beyond form, beyond identity, beyond the stories that bind most people into suffering. And yet, it's not empty. This stillness isn't nothingness. It's aliveness beyond movement, awareness beyond mind. There is clarity here, not the kind that solves problems, but the kind that sees without needing to understand. There is love here, not the kind that clings, but the kind that includes everything, embraces everything without exception. And there is peace, not as the opposite of conflict, but as the absence of resistance. Nothing fights in this stillness. Everything simply belongs. You don't reach this place by force. You don't earn it. You remember it. You return to it. Not by going somewhere new, but by letting go of what you thought was necessary. You don't add stillness to your life. You remove what blocks your experience of it, the overthinking, the striving, the endless need to define. When all of that falls away, stillness is what's left, not as a result, but as the original condition. It's been here your entire life. You felt it when you were very young, before language, before identity. You touched it in moments of awe, in moments of surrender, in moments where everything else dropped away. You didn't know what it was, but you felt it. That expansive, quiet presence, that undeniable aliveness beneath all things. And now as you return to it consciously, something shifts. You stop seeking answers in the surface world. You stop trying to fix what was never broken. You see that the story of me was always floating on this still sea, and that the sea never needed to move to carry you. You were always home. This is the place where even the question, "Who am I?" dissolves, because there's no one left to ask it, and no one left to answer. The question melts into the being, the seeking dissolves into the found, and there is just this. Still, full, silent. It's not dramatic, it's not fireworks, it's not something the ego can boast about. In fact, the ego cannot survive here, because there's no reference point, no comparison, no better or worse. Just being, just the soft echo of presence touching itself. And in this layer, compassion becomes effortless. Because you no longer see others as separate, you see them as waves on the same still ocean. Their stories, their pain, their beauty, it's all part of the same undivided field. And that seeing births love. Not the love of attachment, but the love of unity, of shared being. And still, even in this stillness, life continues. The body moves, the voice speaks, the world turns. But now it's all happening within the field of stillness, not outside of it. You live, but you are not caught. You feel, but you are not lost. You think, but you are not the thinker. Because you have remembered the last layer, the one that doesn't change. And no matter what happens, loss, joy, confusion, clarity, that stillness remains, not as something to retreat into, but as something to live from. It becomes your foundation, your ground, your truth. You can always return, because you never actually left. It's always just beneath the surface, waiting to be seen again. This is not philosophy, this is not concept, this is reality, experienced directly, known wordlessly, and when you know it, you are never the same. You are still, you are whole, you are home. Close your eyes for a moment. Just notice what's here. Let the thoughts slow down, let the stories go quiet. Imagine the internal monologue pauses. No words, no images, no memories rising to the surface. And in that space, in that breath of stillness, something remains. Not a thought, not a sensation, but a knowing. A simple, silent presence that doesn't need anything to define itself. It just is. That is awareness without content. We've been conditioned to believe that consciousness must be filled to be real, that if nothing's happening, we're blank, empty, asleep. But that's just a trick of the mind. In truth, awareness doesn't vanish when thoughts disappear. It becomes more apparent, more pure. You don't need content to be conscious. Consciousness is not what you think about. It's what allows for thinking in the first place. You are not aware because you have thoughts. You are aware despite them. And when they fall away, the awareness becomes unadorned, unfiltered, unmistakable. It's the canvas that was always there, beneath the brushstrokes of mind. It never left. It was simply overlooked because the pictures seemed more interesting. Most people live in the pictures. They chase the images, the voices, the ideas. They confuse the movie for the projector. But when the screen clears, when the film stops rolling, you discover something you didn't expect. You're still here, not diminished, not lost, more alive than ever. Because now, you're touching the source, the field that holds it all. This is why deep meditation isn't about doing something, it's about stopping, softening, letting go of the compulsion to be on, to always be analyzing, planning, narrating. You sit, you breathe, you allow, and eventually something incredible happens. The content fades, but you do not. You begin to notice awareness as it is, not tied to any object, any word, any thought. Just present. Just awake. And it doesn't move, it doesn't strive, it doesn't seek. It holds everything but is bound by nothing. And this awareness is not yours, it is not personal, it's not something you possess. It's something you are. This is the great reversal. The moment you realize that consciousness doesn't belong to you, you belong to consciousness. And suddenly the entire framework collapses. The seeker disappears. The question fades. There's no one left to chase the answer, only the answer itself glowing silently in the space where the question used to be. And that answer is not a sentence, it's a presence. The realization that you are awareness itself, before the mind, beyond the form. This doesn't mean thoughts are bad or wrong. They're simply not required to confirm your being. They come and go, like weather. But the sky remains. The clouds shift, the wind howls, the rain falls, but the sky doesn't move. That is you. That is this awareness. Still, open, untouched. And what's beautiful is that even when thoughts return, and they will, you now know they're not the source of your aliveness. They're just activity within a deeper field. You can let them come and go like waves in the ocean. But you are not the wave, you are the water. And the more you rest in that, the more peaceful life becomes. Not because things go perfectly, but because you no longer cling. You no longer identify with every flicker of mind. You live from the space behind it, the awareness that sees all, holds all, but needs nothing to be complete. This awareness is always now. It doesn't wait for a better moment. It doesn't dwell in the past. It's not in a rush to get somewhere. It's already here, and when you realize that you are this timeless now, the pressure drops, the weight lifts. You stop trying to prove your existence through productivity or performance. You start living from presence rather than effort. And presence doesn't need a reason. It doesn't need a goal. It's not moving toward something. It simply is. In this way, awareness without content is the most radical freedom, because it cannot be grasped, controlled, or destroyed. It is prior to fear, prior to identity, prior to the very idea of me. You may notice moments like this when you lose yourself in awe, staring at a sunset, floating in water, listening to a piece of music that silences your mind. For a second, the content drops, and all that's left is being. Awake, alive, infinite. That's not a special state. It's your natural state, revealed when the noise recedes. And yet, we fear the absence of content. We cling to mental activity like it's life support. We fill every gap with stimulation just to avoid the stillness. But the stillness is not the absence of life. It is the source of life, the ground from which all things arise. So the invitation is simple. Stop, listen, let the mind rest, let the story drop, and feel what remains, not as an object to analyze, but as yourself. Let awareness reveal itself, not as something you control, but as something you are. And the more you return to this, the more you rest in awareness without content, the more the noise loses its grip, the fear fades, the urgency dissolves. Because you are no longer living from the surface, you are living from the depth. And from that depth, everything changes. Not because you change it, but because your perception is no longer distorted. You see clearly. You act from clarity. You love without needing a reason. You give without needing a return. Because the awareness you are doesn't lack anything. It doesn't defend, it doesn't compare, it simply expresses. And that expression is beautiful, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. So remember this. You are not the content. You are not the thoughts. You are not the emotions. You are the awareness that sees it all and needs none of it to exist. And in that awareness, you are free. You live your life with a story in your head, a seamless thread of I that stretches from your earliest memory to this very moment. It feels continuous, like an unbroken line. You think, I was that child. I became this adult. I've always been me. But if you look closely, that line begins to fray. You begin to see the gaps, the jumps, the inconsistencies. The self you think you are isn't a single solid presence moving through time. It's a collage, stitched together from fragments, from separate moments, flickers of thought, a memory here, a projection there, held together not by truth but by narrative. And that narrative is compelling. It tells you who you are, where you've been, what you fear, what you desire. But none of it is actually continuous. What you call you today is not the same constellation that appeared yesterday. And tomorrow it will be something else again. The body changes, the personality shifts, the opinions evolve. Even the memories are rewritten, subtly reshaped each time you recall them. Yet you hold it all together with one word. Me. But what is this me, really? Where does it live? Can you find it in your body, in your thoughts, in your history? Try to pin it down and it slips away. Always just a little behind or just a little ahead. Never exactly here, never exactly now. Because the self, the one you protect, the one you worry about, is not an entity, it's a process, a performance, a continuity that doesn't actually exist except as an idea in the mind. And when you begin to see that, truly see it, something liberating happens. The pressure begins to lift. You no longer have to uphold a fixed identity. You no longer have to make everything fit a consistent story. You can breathe. You can let go. Because now you understand. You don't have to be anyone. You can just be. This doesn't mean you disappear. It means the false continuity dissolves. The glue that held the fragments together was always thought, always language, always a story told in retrospect.